You know, one of the beautiful things about Dynasty Fantasy Football to me is that even in the dead of the offseason, which we are in right now, early February is dead season in fantasy football. If you play Dynasty Fantasy Football and you're so obsessed with it like me and like countless others, you're not resting right now. You're looking at ways to make your team better on the low, on the down low. And right now, I think there's plenty of trade targets that people could be going after just based on the end of 2023. So we're going to go through 4 buy low trade targets to get right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football. This is a new channel, so please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel if you get value from this video to show your support. So let's go ahead and dive into these guys. The first guy that I've got up here is a player that I actually do really have some serious concerns about myself. So you're going to have to go about this one kind of carefully because I don't think you should be putting in too much stock on Jaylen Herz of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jaylen Herz to me is in a very unstable situation that I actually talked about quite a bit on my 2024 early wide receiver rankings on my main channel, Football Fanalysts Network. I've got concerns with Jaylen Herz. I don't think that he's a sure thing because what we saw and what I pointed out quite a bit in 2023 was that 2022, he had a great season, obviously. He broke out, was a true breakout, and then got paid because he went to the Super Bowl. Jaylen Herz was excellent. He looked fantastic, and he looked like he really developed. Well, here's the big thing that I think people need to remember. Shane Steichen, now the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, was the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia in 2022. Indianapolis saw how great he was with Jaylen Herz. They said, we're going to get you to be our head coach and then draft Anthony Richardson and watch what you do with him. What happened to Jaylen Herz in 2023? He regressed. He did. There's no question about it. His numbers on the screen right now don't tell the whole story because it's not the full season. He threw 15 picks this year, and he didn't even throw 10 in 2022. Jaylen Herz, without a doubt, regressed. Now, in fantasy football, still very, very good. He was the quarterback 2 in fantasy this year, right behind Josh Allen at 22 points per game, basically. So, it's not that Jaylen Herz became a horrific player all of a sudden. Like, that didn't just happen in the span of 1 year. He still had a 65% completion percentage and threw for over almost 4,000 yards and rushed for over 600. Jaylen Herz, that's why I think it's a great trade target because the baseline has been set. Basically, without Shane Steichen, we know that he can still put up big points in fantasy football. And in addition, he's on a huge contract, so they're not getting rid of him anytime soon. Jaylen Herz does have a very critical season this year, which is why I think if you go after Jaylen Herz, which I advise you to do in Dynasty, let this be known to the manager of Jaylen Herz. Let him know, listen, this guy regressed without Shane Steichen. Show him the numbers. Because of the numbers in 2022 versus 2023, they speak for themselves. He regressed. This guy is on a team with an unstable head coach that was questioned. Maybe he'll get fired. Now, he didn't, but what does this team do on offense, right? So I would be very careful about this one because I do personally worry a little bit about Jaylen Herz. But with the shot of getting a top 3 quarterback in Dynasty with top quarterback production in fantasy, I'll take that shot. What I would personally do is I would personally go get a package a guy like Justin Fields or package a guy like Jared Goff, get a first rounder and maybe a second rounder and send them to the Jaylen Herz owner. That's what I would personally do. Start out with that and see what they think. Because I'll be honest with you, I've asked around in several Dynasty leagues I'm in to the Jaylen Herz owners what their value is on him, and nobody's really given me a solid answer. So I think people are confused themselves. So that's why I think things can be negotiated here. Just be careful because I do worry, but I do think it's a risk that is worth taking. The next guy I've got up here, it shouldn't surprise you. It was the Jackson Smith-Njigba season all last year, and now it starts over again in 2024. Listen, if you are new to my channel, let me just give you a debriefing of how I feel about Jackson Smith-Njigba. I've been on this guy since 2021 in Ohio State. When he produced massive numbers with CJ Stroud and with Garrett Wilson in the building, with Chris Olave in the building, Marvin Harrison Jr. in the building, and Jaxon Smith-Njigba was the one that you couldn't take your eyes off of, I knew we were dealing with an elite prospect. And it didn't change my mind when he got drafted late in the first to Seattle. And it doesn't change today, even after it was a little bit of a disappointing rookie season. Now, he ended the year strong, and that's why I know that we're about to see more from Jaxon Smith-Njigba. It's a risk I am personally willing to take. I'll give you a little story right here. So in one of my dynasty leagues, I decided to take a risky play and trade for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I sent over Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, and a 2025 first-round pick for Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and I got Nick Chubb as a throw-in player. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, I just believe in him that much. Now, I understand it's not easy if you don't necessarily know who he is or haven't studied him quite as much as me. Let me just give you a debriefing of how I feel about him. So just recently, I started posting my film breakdowns to Patreon that you can see on the screen right now. I used to post them on YouTube. I got in trouble for doing that. That's why they're on Patreon now. So if you support the channel and you want to watch me break down the film of this year's rookie class, join the Patreon today in the comments below. But what I am looking for in Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and not just him, with wide receiver prospects out of college, I have developed a prospect model for the wide receivers that I have found the 4 most transmittable traits a college receiver must have to transfer to fantasy football success at the next level. The first thing I'm looking for is what year did they break out? The earlier, the better. That shows us how fast a wide receiver will adjust to the speed of the NFL. Well, Jaxon Smith-Njigba was a sophomore breakout. That's what we're looking for right there. Early, he showed that he is a top-tier player in college, and he started to show it at the end of his rookie year with Seattle. The next thing I'm looking for is the film breakdown grade. And again, you'll watch me put this one into action on Patreon, but I am looking for how many layers a player has to their game. And let's just say, based on his A+ score in his film breakdown, I loved everything about Jaxon Smith-Njigba's film. The next thing I'm looking for is what was the target share like in his last season of college football. Now, Jaxon Smith-Njigba had a little bit of an interesting ride because he was technically didn't really play much in his last year because he was injured most of the time. He was still excellent. Jaxon Smith-Njigba still had a good B- grade at the target share model. And really, target share, what it shows is that it shows how often a receiver gets open and how important they are to their offense. Jaxon Smith-Njigba hit that metric as well. And what was the draft capital? That shows us how long of a leash the player has. Well, he's a first-round pick. We know they want him to succeed. So Jaxon Smith-Njigba, I believe in the player. I think that he's just going to build off of how he ended this season. I'm big on Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and that trade I told you I did, I would do it all over again. The next guy is probably going to surprise some people who know, who are familiar with me and have watched me for a while. Like I said, this is a new channel, and I was not posting about rookies last year because this channel was new. I was posting about rookies on my main channel. And this particular guy, I was never big on. During the draft process, I got a lot of flack, actually, for how low I was on Quinton Johnson of the Los Angeles Chargers. I discussed before the season about how I thought this guy was going to flop in his rookie year, and it was going to be expected by me, but I think the majority of the fantasy community was going to come away very disappointed because so much of how we view players in fantasy is based on expectations that we put on them. And I said it. I think that the expectations of Quinton Johnson in his rookie year are unfairly placed on him. This guy was not a pro-ready prospect. He just simply was not. He was limited in the film breakdown. His target share was just not great. And this guy had a lot of question marks. They all came to fruition, and he was even worse than I thought. He was awful. Why'd we trade for him? I think it's because his price can be very, very low. Now, I'll tell you guys this. I did try to trade for Quinton Johnson in one of my Dynasty leagues this offseason. I tried to send a third rounder for him. They didn't bite. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do that in your league. That's where I would personally start, though. Because if you are a Quinton Johnson owner, what can you say that is the reason you're going to ask for a bigger price? Like, if you're trying to get a first rounder back, forget it. Nobody's giving you that. A late second rounder this year is also something I'd be willing to do. And let me tell you why. So Quinton Johnson, yes, I did not love the prospect. But I'll tell you what I do love. I love a good value. This guy was a first rounder. He was a sophomore breakout in college. Quinton Johnson, I do think, has the potential to do well with a full season as a starter with Justin Herbert, and now with a stable head coach and a guy who is particularly known for motivation on players with Jim Harbaugh. We got to take some leaps here, but that's why I actually like Quinton Johnson, because I think that his price is so low, I'd be willing to take that shot. Like I said, I am not sending anything more than a late second rounder for him. If the owner of Quinton Johnson in your league is asking for more, turn around and walk away. Be willing to walk away, because that's absurd. But I think that there's some people out there who are just so disgusted with him that you could do this, and there's a possibility that he could rebound. This is very unstable. I've never been a big fan of the player, but it's a shot I would be willing to take with a early third/late second round draft pick in this year's class. The last guy on the list today, and I mean, I think everybody just gets sad when you hear this player's name, because so much potential and opportunity has been wasted in his young career. I'm going for it this year with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, I'm going for it. Listen, I just did a video on my main channel, Football Fanalysts Network, about how Sam Laporta is really changing fantasy football. And in that video, this is very important to highlight with Kyle Pitts. In that video, I discussed how Sam Laporta is one of only 2 tight ends in the past 20 years in fantasy football that had a top 5 finish. It's very, very rare. Now, Kyle Pitts is heading into year 4, and we just haven't seen enough from Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts' best year was his rookie season, tight end 6. It's been nothing but disappointment so far. Here's why I would trade for him. Kyle Pitts, I think everybody, like I said, is in agreement. It's a sad story. Thus far, it is sad, and you'll never get the value back from what you probably used to acquire Kyle Pitts. I think you could get Kyle Pitts for a late second round pick. Kyle Pitts is in a situation where he was just a lot of weeks outplayed by Jonnu Smith. He's also in a situation where they've got no clear answer at quarterback as of the time of this filming. He's also in a situation where the head coaching hire they got, he's a defensive guy. So what is the offense going to look like? Right. Kyle Pitts is still in the doghouse of a lot of dynasty owners. And that's exactly why I would trade for this guy. Because I see the potential. I've seen the potential all along. I actually owned Kyle Pitts in a dynasty league of mine in his rookie year. And I actually traded him midway through his rookie year. And at the time, it was viewed as stupid. And now I'm looking like, well, I came around with draft capital. So, and I'm going to attempt to trade back for him again this offseason. So, I think Kyle Pitts is in a situation where as long as you can stay on the same page with the manager of Kyle Pitts, you can convince them that draft capital is probably going to be their best bet, rather than holding onto a player who's still in a very uncertain situation, but has the high upside we're trading for. So let me know what you think of the trade targets in the comments below, and what questions you need answered for Dynasty Fantasy Football. And if you want to see the top 5 quarterback rankings in this year's Dynasty rookie class, click on this video right here.